speak a little bit about Rosh Hashanah and what the Avodah that we have on Rosh Hashanah is. And I believe what I'm saying, I don't believe that most of you have ever heard it in a forum like this, but I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't know. From the most important mitzvahs that we have, we say Kriya Shema every day, and in Kriya Shema we makabel ol malchus shamayim. What does that mean? What does that mean? In other words, we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in heaven and He runs the world, and we accept His dictatorship over the Bria. That's more or less the simple understanding of what does it mean to be makabel ol malchus shamayim. And then we have Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah is about Malchus, about the same kind of a thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. So I'd like to speak a little bit about this idea of what does it mean, Malchus, and I believe those people from the 20th, 21st century don't really have an understanding of what Malchus is, because Malchus is passé, I would say, at the beginning of the 20th century, it already more or less didn't exist. And if we would have an understanding of Malchus is, then we'd have an understanding of what the ultimate Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, then we would be able to understand better the Avodah that we have on Rosh Hashanah. I would say that we live in a world that Malchus was on the wane from the time that most of us were children, to the point which most people, they say, is there any king around? Yeah, maybe in England there's a king, but all that king is a figurehead. In other words, he doesn't have any real power. He's just a figurehead, and people maybe enamor him, they like him, they hate him, whatever it is. That's not the subject, but he's not a power of the country. The power of the countries that we live in today are democratic, which is, as I'm an American, I say, for the people, by the people, of the people. That's the world that we live in. Whereas a melech is the man that from the beginning to the end, it's whatever he says, that's what happens. And he's not like a elected official that has to go out there, pound the streets to get people to like him and then vote for him, because he has to service the people. In a democratic society, the leader, even no matter how much power he has, that power is given to him by the people, and his purpose is for him to execute that which the people want. Obviously, we hope that leader has a certain amount of powers and insight that the average person on the street doesn't have, and he'll lead them properly, but his job is to do the Ratzon Ha'am. His job is not to do what he wants or to make the Ratzon Ha'am. His job is to do what they want. Whereas a king, his job is to do what he wants. That's like a very basic difference between the two. And we live in a world that doesn't really have kings as leaders. At least we don't have in the world any kings that are world leaders. Maybe there's some backwards country someplace that have some kind of a king, but on a international level, we don't have people who are really kings. We have dignitaries, we have heads of states that have different, depending on which country, how much power they have. But at the end of the day, they are subjects of the populace. And this is it has its good side to it, and its bad side to it, but we don't really have the example of kingdom, understanding what a kingdom is. I saw somebody write about this. This happened during the Second World War. There were nations that the government went into exile. And they went to England and they ran their government from a different country. This is a mashal of Shchinta Begalusa. We have the Shechina, and the Shechina is really the power that runs the world. And it could be that Klal Yisrael doesn't deserve to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu ruling us here in Eretz Yisrael, and he goes into Golus. And when Klal Yisrael goes into Golus, the Shechina goes into Golus with him, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world from that place where Klal Yisrael is, wherever it is, whether it's in Europe, America, wherever it is, it doesn't make any difference. But we have Shchita de Galusa. But the thing which I would like to discuss is this idea of what does it mean to have a melech. All right, so I'm just going to say over things. I'm not trying to say anything that you don't know, just maybe having it in an orderly fashion will make us have an understanding. The king can do nothing wrong, because whatever the king does, that is right. That's like a given right. If the person is the king, whatever he does is right, and we have to run our lives around that which the king says. Now, there's no way you cannot scrutinize the king. I'll just share with you this idea in a 20th century Hasidic mode. There was a certain Hasidic Rebbe about 40 years ago that he made a major change in his Hasidus, from doing one kind of a minhag to a totally different minhag. And because of that, there was a grassroots movement in the Hasidus to start a second Hasidus. And one of his primary Hasidim got up and said, if we're Hasidim, we don't have a right to judge that which the Rebbe does, right? And if you're going to be judging that which the Rebbe does, you're already not a Chassid. You're missing out on the whole idea of what does it mean to be a Rebbe. I'll just take this to another level. I tell this to my kids all the time. You are not on the administration. In the family setting, so myself and my wife, we're on the administration, and our children are the ones that have to follow that which the administration sets up for them. Now, that doesn't mean that we never ask our children their opinions, but as a family is concerned, they are not in a position to voice an opinion. They don't have a vote. They're not of age. They're not in the right place to have a vote. And the king is the person who he doesn't have anybody that he has to answer to, and whatever he does, that is the right thing. Now, we ask the question, so why would someone want to be a subject of a king? I'm going to answer that question in a very simple way, and I believe that this answer has a deeper meaning to it also. Maybe we'll explore that also. A person who is a subject to a king, he doesn't have to make any decisions. Whatever the king says, that's what he does. His decisions are all after the fact that there's a kingdom over here. All right? And we're right now going to move that to that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let's just say HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and we are obligated to follow all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. Does that mean that we have to like everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us to do? But whether we like it or not has absolutely no impact on the fact that we have to follow that which he told us to do. Right? This is an important concept. This is an introductory concept to understand what does it mean to have a melech. I'm just going to share with you something which is extremely important, and I believe this is actually center stage in the Avodah on Rosh Hashanah. If someone were to ask me, what is our Avodah on Rosh Hashanah? I would point to the third bracha of Shemona Esrei, that extensive insert which is said in At HaKadosh, where we speak about the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'chol HaRisha Kula K'ashen Tichle, all the bad things in the world should dissipate, and all the goyim should know for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, etc. If you look at that tefillah is be'etzem, the essence of what Rosh Hashanah is. And there's a question which I think has to be asked. If you read that tefillah, it says nothing about us.
Is that before Melech HaKadosh?
Right before Melech HaKadosh, right? There's like 3 paragraphs. Okay? It says nothing about us. We don't ask for anything for ourselves. It doesn't say anything which is going to happen to us. How could this be the purpose of Rosh Hashanah? And I think the answer to that question is very simple. The king goes to war. And all of the people in the country, they are mobilized to this war effort. And what is their banner? What are they trying to accomplish? That the country should win. What are they going to get out of it? Right? That guy who he enlists, and I just would like to make this clear. I'll give you a mashal, and I believe that this mashal is very helpful for people in their avodas Hashem in general. About this time of year, probably 25 years ago, I was in a certain shul, and the gabbai of that shul is a very large shul. The gabbai of that shul has about 350 mispalim every tefillah Rosh Hashanah, and he was arranging the seats. And I asked him, how's it going? So he says, boy, did I just have an incident. A lady came to me and she demanded a certain seat, and she had absolutely no right to that seat, and I put her in her place. So I said to her, who is that lady? And he tells me who she is, and she was a almana who was actually had a few situations that make her a person that we have to deal with care. And I told this gabbai, I said, are you out of your mind? You are not allowed to speak to a lady that has that kind of a situation like that. You have to speak to her in proper terms. And I quoted from the sources that demand that a lady in such a situation has special preferred treatment. And I said, check it out and come back to me. 2 days later, the guy comes back to me and he says, I checked it out and you're 100% right. And I submitted my resignation as a gabbai. Okay? So I finally got a gabbai who understands what he's supposed to do, and I put him out of business, right? So I had to think fast. What am I going to tell this fellow? So I told him as follows. I said to him something which is not so fashionable in today's day and age, but I said, in the years gone by, let's say the last 5,000 years, it's a little piece of history, whenever a king would go to war and he would declare war, there would be people who volunteered to be soldiers. Okay, this is international. There are millions of people that have done this for the last 5,000 years. Probably maybe in 1 billion people that have done this. Let me ask you a question. Are those people crazy? If you become a soldier, there's a chance that you may be killed. Why would a person accept upon himself such a position? And I said, I'm not going to accept that all those millions and maybe billions of people are all crazy, right? And there's an answer to that question. I'm going to share with you the answer to that question. First of all, it's not guaranteed that if you're a soldier, you're going to die. It's just that there's a chance, right? And that's first of all. And second of all, there are things in life that are greater than life. And the reason why we live is to accomplish things in life that are greater than life. Because if there would be nothing greater than life, there would be no purpose in being born. Because all of us here, for X amount of years, after 120 years, we're not going to be here anymore. So if just being alive is the purpose, you're not going to succeed in being alive, because we all have a date that we will expire. So, what is that we're here for? We're here to do things which are greater than life. And a person who is a patriot, he believes that the good of his country is greater than his personal purpose in life. And therefore he's willing to gamble, possibly dying, so that the country should be able to move forward. I don't think I said anything that you all don't know, right? This is very simple. Now, that is true also in our Avodah Hashem. It's true that a person who serves Hashem will get Olam Haba, and they'll have schar, and there's all unbelievable things. But is that the reason that we're here? So that we should get schar? Or is the reason that we're here is to further the cause of the monarchy? HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a world, and this world is greater than each and every one of us here, and even than all of us collectively. And therefore, if we donate our whole existence to the furtherance of this world, we have done something greater than we ourselves could personally accomplish. This is the idea of what does it mean for a person to be makabel ol malchus shamayim. A person is makabel ol malchus shamayim, he understands that there's a greater good, and I am willing to subjugate myself to that greater good, and by doing so, it's also true I will eventually benefit from that, because whatever I donate will come back, but that greater good is infinitely greater than all of the personal good that I can accomplish in the world as long as I'm alive. So the Avodah that we have on Rosh Hashanah is to be Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, now, after having said that, I would like to mention a halachic debate, and I've discussed this in other years, but I believe that we're in a place that we could actually even understand it. There's a great machlokes of the Poskim, the Mekubalim. There's this machlokes exists in all the different strata of Yiddishkeit. Is a person supposed to ask on Rosh Hashanah for his personal needs? You know, one person needs health, another person needs parnasa, another person needs children. You know, some people need nachas. Everybody has their pekel, their subject that they need help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is one supposed to be asking about those things on Rosh Hashanah? The Zohar says that a person who does that, he's like a dog barking, which is not a very positive statement. And there are many of the Bali Musar, and the Shloah says that a person who doesn't do that missed out on understanding the importance of the day. So you have those who say, you gotta do it, and those that say you better not do it, right? So this is like, the ultimate contradiction. What is one supposed to do? So I'm going to share with you the Stipler's answer to this contradiction, and I believe that this is the Shvil HaZahav in this area. He says we should ask for those personal things that we want in order that we should be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu better. In other words, a person makes a meal. They want their meal to be tasty. Why do they want their meal to be tasty? Because if you have a tasty meal, you'll eat better. What will you accomplish by eating better? Some people will be able to pat their stomach. Some people, they'll be able to function better if they ate better. So when we want to eat better, we should have in mind that if we eat healthy, we eat better, we'll be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu better. And then that becomes from a orgy to an act of service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a very important concept. All the areas that we call reshus in our lives, they can be elevated to an area of service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a very important nekuda that we have to understand. And the basis to understand that is to understand that there is a melech, and that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and our objective is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the message that I believe is very important for a person to realize before Rosh Hashanah, to understand what is he supposed to be working on when he gets to Rosh Hashanah. Now, I'd like to add to this a fascinating thought that there's some of the Baalei Musar say, and I believe that this is a key that can not only make your Rosh Hashanah better, but it could make all of your Aseres Yemei Tshuva better until Ne'ilah. In the laning of Rosh Hashanah, there are sometimes things that are in the laning, we feel, why is this here? So we understand why the piece beforehand is here, we understand why the piece afterwards is here. So we sometimes think, this is here in the Torah, so, you just have to drive through that piece. But there's no such thing. Everything that is there has a purpose. One of the stories that's seemingly purposeless in the Kriya of Rosh Hashanah is the story of Hagar going with Yishmael, and she throws Yishmael down, and she goes and cries, and he cries, and the Chazal say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Shama L'kol Anar Ba'asher Hu Sham. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu listened to the cries of Yishmael Ba'asher Hu Sham. And Chazal learned from there that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't take into account all of the negative things that Yishmael is going to do in the future. Ba'asher Hu Sham, the way he is right now, he is deserving of a good decree that he should be saved, and that's enough. And from here, the Baalei Musar say that a person, when he comes to Rosh Hashanah, should be Ba'asher Hu Sham, and that's enough. You don't have to worry about what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. Where are you right now today? There are those that take this to another level. The simple leading of a Ba'asher Hu Sham means you're judged kafi what you have done until now. You are a product of all of your history till now. Each and every one of us that are here, our being here is a product of our existence until we walked into this room. There are some that say the Ba'asher Hu Sham means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't even look backwards at what brought us to where we are. Right now, you're in a situation that he's crying, that he should be saved, and he should be able to exist. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will listen to your tefillas Ba'asher Hu Sham without even having to judge that which happened before. And this is part of the Avodah of Rosh Hashanah. If a person on Rosh Hashanah accepts the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'asher Hu Sham, forget about what I did yesterday. Forget about what I'm going to do tomorrow. Right now, what do I really want? If I really want to be Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be the central force in my life, that is enough for a person to make it through Rosh Hashanah. Now, I just would like to add in a fascinating idea. And this idea, if you look hard enough, you'll find it in many Sfarim. But the way that I'm going to tell it to you sounds a little bit new. But I would just say Rabbi Avrohom, the Mashiach of the Mir, speaks about it, the Chovos Avodah speaks about it, and even if you ask me, the Rush speaks about it. Many of the commentators for the last 800 years have been discussing this issue. People assume that tshuva and chet go together. I like to say that chet needs tshuva, but tshuva does not need chet. And this is a fascinating idea, and I would like to explain very simply, what does the word tshuva mean? Okay, the word tshuva means to return. Okay, each one of us is a little piece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu called an neshama that we were chiseled out from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we were put into our bodies. Now, that piece of neshama had to undergo a certain amount of downgrading until it was able to enter into a physical body. That already is a richuk. We have distanced ourselves from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just by being born, we have already distanced ourselves from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have been born, but we have already created a gap between what we are in our essence and the way that we exist today. Now, a person who never did an Avera in his life, and that there are people who never did an Avera, there are 4 people in the world that never did an Avera. Does that mean that they did everything to the nth degree? No. The Nefesh HaChaim says that's not possible, but the human aspect of a human cannot have that all of his actions all the time are all 1,000%. Some of them are only 995%. So that piece that's missing, that 0.5% that's missing, that is something that a person has to do tshuva for. And even the things that a person do to 100% of his ability, but there was more to do, that's also a place where tshuva should be put into use. And therefore, even if a person basher husham means that he has accepted upon himself that now I'm going to try my hardest to go in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that means that gives you a job, that you're going to have to do tshuva on all the things which you did, which were negative. As I said, chet demands tshuva, because a person who does a chet, he caused to distance himself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he has to do tshuva. But tshuva does not demand that a person did a chet. But those of us, at least I'll start with myself, have definitely done Averis and Tavshin Pehei, and we have to do tshuva on those Averis. Now, the first step in doing tshuva is to have to recognize where we're trying to go. We're trying to go to be closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is what it says, afilu hirher shel tshuva can make a person like a tzaddik gomer, because that's the initial step that's necessary to get us to go in the right direction. And this is the nakuda, I believe, that there has to be central in our Rosh Hashanah. Now, it's a very nice thought, and I just leave you with some kind of esoteric idea. I would like to just bring this to a little bit more of a practical piece of advice. Tomorrow, many of you are going to daven Shachris. And I'm just going to guess, many of you have your personal tefillas that you're going to add in. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give me X, Y, and Z. And it's all legitimate. I just ask that you add one sentence in. If I have those things, I believe I'll be able to serve you better. Okay? That's a very simple statement to put into your tefillah. And I bet it probably will weed out some of the things that you were planning to be mispalel for and put some other ones into it. But this is how you prepare yourself for Rosh Hashanah. You are making a checklist of what makes me that I should be a good citizen in the world of the monarchy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it doesn't take much. We don't have to make major changes in our lives to be part of this monarchy. All we have to do is add a dimension of understanding. That's all. As I say many times, I ask people, when's the last time you spoke to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So the guy says, 2 weeks ago, I said, what about chakras this morning? I say, yeah, but that doesn't count, right? Why doesn't it count? Because you weren't talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? You were just davening because that's what you do every day. Okay, I'm just saying, even those who do daven every day, you have to stop to think about what you're asking and why you're asking for what you're asking. I'll just mention people who have parents. I say this many times. Children invariably do things which are incorrect to their parents. And the parents are always mochel their children. Does that mean that the child shouldn't ask for forgiveness? No. The two things are not mutually exclusive. Okay? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking to be mochel us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking to help us out to become closer to Him. But we have to make our initial step. And the initial step that I believe that we could start with from tonight is just to think about what does it mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. And if we stop to think about what does it mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, we don't have to make major changes in our lives. We can make subtle changes which will bring about a dramatic difference in the way that we perform all the things that we do in Mitzvah Hashem in Tov Shin Pei Vav.